Thank you very much. I'm glad that you are participating. Today, I would like to share my personal story, my personal experience on how to meet people and how to offer services. I have a company, just as was mentioned in the introduction. The company has been active for 10 years, and I'm the so-called BDSM manager, so business development, sales, and marketing. Whatever the company sells is what I sell. Recently, I am not using any advertising. I'm using only direct sales. We are only selling B2B. So we are subcontractors, and for me it's important to approach a person who is a decision-making person and to share something about myself, about our company, in such a way that the person gets interested to work with us. And there are many small issues involved in how to do it correctly, because you can make the wrong first impression and this will be the end of it. So I will share something about the sales speech. This term comes from the baseball, and it means like a short kick in baseball, and sometimes it is called elevator pitch. So very brief presentation which would fit into 1 minute. If you're on the same elevator with a person at a skyscraper, and you should be able to quickly tell about your company and to get a check. So some companies tell that they were created because they caught the investor in the right time and were able to pitch themselves correctly. Over the last year, I had 420 of such pitches. I have the physical and technical education, and so I can make conclusions quite quickly. I can structure things and to understand how to do things correctly. So today I will mention how to approach people, how to establish contact, how to finish the contact, and how to train yourselves. So I will not mention such things as aggressive sales, spam, etc. My basic idea is that there are three classic mistakes in the sales. So you are saying the bad stuff, you are selling in the bad way, and you are selling to the wrong person. So the main idea here is you have to sell a good product to someone who can possibly be interested in it, and you are doing it in the right place. And in this case, a sales speech would be a good and effective instrument. Also, a small disclaimer, I sometimes use words which can be perceived as aggressive, like hunting, for instance, and it can be perceived by some as objectivation of a potential client. On the one hand, yes, that's partly true, but also if we work with people in this particular concept, we are working for mutual benefit. So we are selling something they need, and they are buying something we want to sell. The only thing is to do the actual sell. I haven't seen much information on how to pitch in books or in workshops. This is something I developed myself, so I had to develop my own terminology. There are long, short, and backwards pitches. So the short one is when you approach and tell the potential client about yourself. As a rule, people who are decision makers in the companies or CEOs in big companies, they perceive such short pitches quite positively. So if you approach and very quickly and succinctly tell what you want from them. So quite often we can read this on Facebook that businessmen are sick and tired of people who tire them with some details, and this is something totally contrary to that. Short elevator pitches, so to speak. So long pitches is when you are making some kind of an introduction, and this is something suitable when the situation is not appropriate for sharing things quickly. So if you are staying together on some vacation, or there is some funeral, well, of course, that's not a suitable situation for a short pitch. So if you are well prepared and you know about some common interest, you can start speaking about baseball or something, and then you can drop in this phrase that, oh, I'm also doing technical translation. So this is a more complicated approach. It requires more effort, and also it has some small uh, caveat. If a person uh, realizes that everything you said before was only to speak about your product later, then they will not be willing to listen to you next. So my ideal approach is to combine a long speech and a long pitch and a short pitch, but there is this difficult detail on how to switch. And the backward speech is when, for instance, you are a speaker and the people are approaching you. So this works if there was something in your presentation that caught their attention, and this is of course an ideal option, and it will only work in some percentage of cases, but this can also be used to prepare the ground. If someone is recognizable, if a person has seen you before, if they know you in one way or another, on some psychological level, unperceivable level, the person will have a better attitude to you. The pitch itself, well, I will tell about that a bit later. There are some small details about that, but once you approach, you need to tell something, and this has some well-defined structure. There was some psychological experiment which showed if a person speaks confidently, uh, charismatically, etc. For instance, an actor is invited to give a lecture in front of the students, and the actor does not understand a thing about the subject they are speaking of. It still makes some impression on your mere charisma, the way you are speaking, and it's also important to adapt to a particular person. You should quickly understand how to speak, like quicker or slower, to include more meat or just several facts and more words. So this can be developed through practice, through exercises, of which I will share more. So you should be able to do it correctly. If your offer is the best one in the world, but you say it in a dull tone, maybe people decide not to buy from you. The structure. It should be built according to the AIDA principle: attention, interest, desire, and action, in this particular order. So if a person does not want to do something, they will not do it. So you have to arouse some desire, but before that there should be interest, and before the interest should be attention. Otherwise, you will achieve no result. So before talking to a person, you need to get attention. After that, you need to develop interest. After that, desire. After that, action. So first, you can begin with exchanging business cards, but this can entail the difference in perception of your approach. And the essence. You should have some unique offer. For instance, when it comes to translators, the translator would approach you. Hello, I'm Mr. So-and-so. I'm doing technical translations of IT, medicine, law, etc., from English into Russian. There are hundreds of people who are doing the same. Uh, you are not saying anything new. But if you tell that, hello, I'm doing technical translations in the nuclear industry, and I worked on a nuclear power plant for 5 years. Maybe in this case, the person will recall you. And if a person mentioned a long list of the topics, maybe you will not be remembered. But if you offer something unique, then people will remember you. For instance, we are pitching only technical translations. Also, we are doing other translations as well sometimes. But since people can remember us, they can also offer us something else. And in this case, we may either agree or not agree. Sometimes we don't agree, but this works. Also, before, when I was doing networking in Kiev before, I had a big pile of business cards, and people were offering me the same kind of service, like accounting, law, etc. Even if I need this kind of service, I will not use those business cards because they haven't offered anything unique. And also, there should be a plan. Even more importantly, there should be the process of planning. There shouldn't be any script because this is not effective. But when you are prepared, when you have considered different options of how the situation can develop, and if you have practiced this, at least in theory, this will give you the benefit, and especially the benefit of the time, because we only have seconds to make first impression, and it's highly important to do everything correctly from the very beginning. Now comes the self-presentation itself. There was some movie which I couldn't recall and find, but a young lady was trained to do something. So she was given a task to approach some particular person, some scholar, and to introduce herself. And she was introduced by another person and told, well, now you can start the conversation. But this could only irritate a person. So for instance, like if you are working on the computer and someone is standing behind your shoulder, well, that person will surely get your attention, but that's not the right kind of the attention. Or if the person is in a hurry, or if the cab is waiting for them, well, yeah, okay, they will answer you, okay, who are you, what do you want from me, but you will give a wrong impression. Also, never have your first meeting near the toilet. Also, do not distract people from their gadgets, or if a person looks pensive and thoughtful, do not contact at that point. But at some point, you will see a person roaming, and it's done on a subconscious level. We instinctively, as primates, are looking for eyes, and if you establish eye contact, at that point, they can perceive it and understand that there was this eye contact before you. Before that, you didn't exist. But once this happened, once there is this eye contact, the person saw you and smiled at you, well, in this case, you can approach and there will be no irritation involved. Especially, there was an interesting situation when I was going here by car, and there was a big one with the eyes on the back of the car, but I always got myself trying to make eye contact with this picture of eyes on the back of the cars. There was some additional research, like when there are eyes near a jar of cookies, people tend not to steal cookies because they see those eyes. And so eyes are hugely important in our life. And if you are not noticeable, but at a certain point you suddenly made an eye contact, this makes a huge difference. And not only at work, if you want also to meet a girl, or if you want to approach some official to thank them for the work they have done, well, this is also the right way to begin your first conversation. So we have made this first step. We have made our eye contact. We know that the person has already introduced themselves to us. We can finish that contact there, or we can continue. If the person is smiling, well, maybe there are no barriers. Sometimes you will get their eye contact back, but the person is not smiling. And if your emotional intellect is highly developed, you will understand that there is not an appropriate situation to start your pitching. And in this case, maybe the best beginning is to relieve this tension by discussing some situation like the rain, or the food, or make a small joke, if you can do a joke, of course. That's a difficult skill, but if you are successful at that, you will successfully relieve the barrier. And in this case, you can introduce yourself, tell who you are, and formally get a permission to pitch. So I have never got a formal no, although I would work with that situation with interest. But there should be this act of permission. So not always a person likes to introduce themselves back, but they always agree to hear your short pitch. And in this case, you can say, I am Mr. So-and-so, let me tell you about our company, etc. And if it's a long pitch, we could start with something like relieving the barriers. So we can discuss the food or the recent baseball play in the Supreme League, and only after that you can say, I'm by the way Volodymyr, and I'm Sergey, and what's your business? And my business is technical translation.
I would like to focus on this again. If a person can feel that you do have the interest, even if you were genuinely interested and the person might think you were not, that's even worse when you address directly, I'm Vasa Popkin, I want you to be my client. Because at least it's normal, it's business, baby. Well, usually I do this in English. Then in Russian, it's well, I need to think of a phrase. Well, I didn't have the script ready. Yeah, hello. Like, may I tell you about my company? Well, usually it's the networking session at the conference, or when there is this speed date. They don't need to do this, but the format implies this. But if you're having some tea and I approach you with my coffee and I may introduce myself and my company, usually this is how I do. Well, we discussed the introduction. When the context has been established and the people talk to you, they listen to you, when they ask questions, that's the perfect situation. It's not a pitch anymore, it's the sales session. Well, you can use different tactics or strategy or technique. Of course, you can work with negations, with objections, trying to understand the needs. We do have the scripts prepared, trying to understand how we answer the questions when they come. Usually, the questions are very similar. What is the scope of your company? What kind of services? Which languages? If you try to squeeze it all into the pitch, it will be really fuzzy and not easy to understand. If the customer wants to ask the specifics, he will do this himself. Another issue is about the manipulations, and actually, I would not vow for that. Trying to avoid this as much as possible because I believe there is a bad seller when they say no, he left. Of course, you can get a no, but after that, you would also get a client because they will remember about you. But on the other person, you will be so indignating that a person would say, with all of the untranslatable stuff and sending you away. I have never faced such situations apart from being on the other side when they're trying to sell some office supplies to me, etc. It's a very subtle situation. If you ask, are you interested? No. Well, turning your back around and leave, this is another extremity. But you might get very slightly pressed, but not to overdo it, not to have this harsh sales or aggressive sales. Even when you establish the contact, you will be remembered. But it's important to get the contacts because if you fail to get the business card, even if they remember you, then your business card could be lost or whatever, or maybe they could have many business cards. You need to call the person. You need to write to a person. Very often, a person might not have a business card around. It's not a problem. You can offer your business card, and they would leave the contacts or maybe on the flyer or whatever. So it's important to give something to a person to take away. I don't use the flyers, but maybe there's a discount flyer. I believe it's all over the Europe at the moment. After that, you should do the follow-up. When you broke the contact and you left, you don't need to be too intrusive or persistent. You need to find this balance. When you leave, when a person starts looking for another eye contact, it's better to finish at that point. You might do it yourself. Bless you. Then a brief summary, and now more about the skills. How do you use my pitching method? First we develop our psychological skills, the communication skills. We're trying to get ready. Whatever your homework can be, how you need to define your target audience. Do we work with specific people? Do we work on the whole? Do we prepare the brief pitches? Do we prepare the scripts? What do we offer in this specific context? If this is the translation industry conference, then of course you could be talking about the subcontraction. If these are the end clients, of course more technical information could be included. And you are trying to prepare different scripts, different scenarios for the pitches, like what exactly you're going to answer when you get the specific question, how do you finish, etc. At the event with your prospective clients, you're trying to somehow show up. Maybe you have a presentation, a speech, maybe ask a question. Asking question is a very good thing to have. It works very well. I usually try to think of some questions in the first sessions, not because I'm interested, but I want others to remember me. After that, we start the hunt. We hunt for the specific person. We get the eye contact, that's great. The eye contact is there. Then you try to figure out whether the person is satisfied with the contact. Not. If yes, you reduce the block and you start your pitch, and then you finish your pitch and you get the contact. If the person refuses to give you any contact, even to give the emails to you, well, okay, fine. You cannot sell everything to everyone. You might not get anything. Well, even if you insist and get the contact, it means you didn't, because if a person is irritated, then they would not be following up. So you just let it go. And then after that, you should think of some follow-up. Not some follow-up, but the specific, elaborated follow-up. But that's another story to share. And these are about different skills. This is about another presentation. And homework, that's the last thing to mention. How do you train the skills that are essential here? First of all, this is psychological background, and then communication skills. Communication skills can be really trained different games like Mafia, or maybe joining some clubs. Now I got into the acting business, and you might have watched on YouTube my videos of some of the sketches I was doing. But you need to train it for a long period of time. Of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but the psychological preparation, it could be done overnight. For example, when you are embarrassed or you're nervous, this is just one day of training, and it really helps you. And it can help you overcome yourself when you get outside and start dancing in front of the others. If you're embarrassed to do this, try it. It's not difficult to do. Nobody is going to judge you. Even if they are judgmental, it's fine. You shouldn't be caring. Well, I have always thought I was introvert until I was 33. So whenever I heard some noise behind the door, I never opened the door. Well, the neighbor should leave past. I need to contact him. That's hard to do. So I realized I needed to do this. I had this hypercompensation, and I tried it, and I enjoyed it. And now I find it very difficult to think of any challenge that could really embarrass me. I would do anything, and I would feel comfortable. I do understand that my skills, well, of course, there is a leeway for me to improve, but I would feel comfortable anywhere, even if the shark is traveling around this river. But anyway, whatever happens, I feel comfortable. Good luck. Good luck on that. And I will be happy to take any questions. We don't have much time for that, I have told. But I do hope that some of you found this information interesting. If there are no questions, it was totally uninteresting or maybe ununderstandable. Please tell us more about where do you pitch. You mentioned the conference. What kind of conferences? Are these the industry-specific conferences? Where are you looking for your target customers? Well, of course, these things are applicable to a wide range of pitches. Me specifically, I go to international conference and to the conferences like this, where other people from my industry are coming. But we are the subcontractors. This is our peculiarities. We are subcontracting other companies. So at the conferences like this, or Gala conference, or Elia conference, networking for executives, there were 100 people there representing all of the European companies. All of these are my prospective clients, and some of them actually have become my clients. You mentioned the fact, you're probably running the statistics, that you had 420 pitches in a year. How many of them resulted into the transaction, into the contract or order? About 10% of them ended up in the cooperation. Well, some of the customers would bring 10,000 euro, and some of these 10. because they don't need it, but they are very happy to have us. Thank you very much, Vladimir. You see that Vladimir is totally open for communications. This is where the feedback can be assessed when you can approach the speaker and ask any questions you need. I think he will be happy to take them. So we will shift the questions for later. Thank you. You are the great audience.